Hey, good evening, everybody. We're back for another episode of Meteorology Lab. And I don't know if you can hear that, but we've got a little bit of rain outside, so that's going to kind of be the background noise during the webcast here. And this is what it looked like about 45 minutes ago. Just hang on a second. So that's what it looked like just as we lost daylight. And that's a thunderstorm off to the south there, putting out a little bit of thunder. And I've got a extended sample, which we'll close out the weathercast with a little bit later. So why don't we start with a synoptic scale picture. Okay, there's what we have going on. Very, let me get this centered here. Very high baroclinicity this evening. And you can see those red lines where they're packed together. That's where we have a frontal boundary. So that's stretched all the way from Ontario through Minnesota and then down to the desert southwest, the Mojave Desert right around there. So off that, I think we could put a front maybe through the LA area, somewhat like that. And a warm front around the Kingman area, and then that would extend possibly southward. You can see this little bit of ridging we have in the Texas Panhandle. So there's probably a little extension of the cold air mass through here. So that's likely going to be maybe a stationary front or a cold front. I'm sorry, stationary front or a warm front. And then let's see here. We've probably got a little something like this going on here, and then we're picking up the old boundary, maybe further south like that. So I think we're looking at three air masses. Here's the tropical air mass. Here's the polar air mass. And this one has a little bit more Canadian origin. If you want to go with the old air mass system, that would be continental polar. And then over California, we have maritime polar. And then the air mass over Arizona, that would be the continental tropical air mass. And during the springtime, this is a very strong source region for the cap, which advects westward and spreads over the top of the tropical air mass. So we have high pressure over southern Canada out in this area here, so that's where we have this cold air mass, where the thickness lines kind of arc south like this. So this is all cold air. And along with that cold air, we have this high pressure because it's a very dense air mass. And then further up to the north, it looks like we have some stronger advection taking place in Hudson Bay. And the core of the coldest polar air looks to be over Baffin Island. And that's usually where we see the cold air most of the year. And this is also the graveyard area for storm systems as they move eastward. What actually happens with the storm tracks, I don't know how many of you have actually followed the progress of maybe the storm's life cycle. But the overall progress is from west to east. So they take a track kind of like that, but the individual low pressure areas, they form along the area of baroclinicity and they kind of move northward. Then we have another area of low pressure form, and that moves northward. And all these lows, they tend to migrate up into the Labrador Sea area, and this is like what we call the graveyard for occlusions. So most of them end up in this area, and in fact there's already an occlusion up in the area right now, right in this area here. So that's a little bit off the top of the air map, top of the map there. And then out in the Pacific, we have another system heading this way. There's the cold air over the western Gulf of Alaska. There's the cold front heading for the Pacific. And it looks like the warm front is up in Yukon and northern British Columbia, maybe something like that right there, or maybe something like this. So now we have a pretty good idea where all the air masses are, and we can take a look at the surface chart and take a look at the plots, and we'll start out with the western U.S. Okay, we were talking about a front maybe being in the California area or the Los Angeles area, and what we see here is, in fact, there's southwesterly winds at Vegas, 81 degrees there, so quite possibly we have the frontal boundary a little bit further north, maybe something like that right there. And then between Utah and Arizona, I think we've got a frontal boundary, as we've seen with that previous map, so I'm going to put it somewhat like that. Looks like a little bit of smoke being reported there at Prescott. And let me bring up the potential temperature, and that'll help us out somewhat. Not of much help in California because of the effects of the marine layer, some of it's moving inland. However, it's definitely useful inland around the Four Corners area, so that'll help us locate where the front is. Looks like it's around Page, the Grand Canyon area, and then we've probably got a low pressure area in the Las Vegas region. And so I might go with something like that there. And then further north, I think we've got a little bit of a occlusion up around Fallon, Nevada, kind of in this area here. So that's one of those occluding lows that we've talked about. So that's heading north and dissipating. And then the new low pressure area kind of picks up the slack there. Okay, in Texas, let's check that out. We've got upslope flow in West Texas. There it is right there. And this is tropical air. We can see the dew points are in the mid-60s. Very rich moisture. And this is the convergence line. West of there, we've got the desert air mass over El Paso. So we're seeing southwest winds there at El Paso and south winds through much of the New Mexico desert. And that contrasts very sharply with the cooler tropical air over eastern New Mexico like that. Okay, then taking a look up north, cool air, lots of 40s and 50s up in that region. And then we take a look at the Hudson Bay area. And this is where the coldest air is over the North American continent. And we're starting to see teens, very cold air up there in the Canadian high Arctic. This is very close to the dew line, the distant early warning line. That was a Cold War relic of radars that were positioned along this line here. And along that dew line, we're seeing those northwest winds there are very gusty, up to 37 knots right here, and 19 degrees. So winter is definitely starting to shape up here. And some of that cold air spreading over the Hudson Bay area. And we'll see a little bit of this on the satellite in a minute here. Very strong frontal boundary in the Northwest Territories. You can see the gradient there with the potential temperature. North of this line here, it's very strong. So that's the very strong thermal contrast. So it appears we have some recycled polar air in this region here. Yukon and British Columbia, somewhat warm, and then the fresh, cooler continental air just to the northwest of there. So there's really a lot going on today. And let's take a look out east and see what's happening there. Okay, well, out in the Midwest area, we've got a cold front approaching. And there's a location of that front right there. So it's approaching Madison, Green Bay, down to the Quad Cities, and down to Kansas City. And ahead of that, we've got some warm air, tropical moisture, dew points in the mid to upper 60s. And then you can see the dew points, they kind of fall off as you go eastward. And that's because as you go east, we get into more of a stagnant polar air mass. This is the remains of the last cold air outbreak. And so the dew points come down to the 40s and 50s in Pennsylvania there. So with this warm air over Illinois and the cold air over New York, there's probably a front between the two. So the best thing to do is start out in the warm air mass. We have 70s in Missouri, 70s here, and we just kind of follow the road eastward. So when we get to Cleveland, we've got 72 degrees. Dew points starting to fall off. And then we see temperatures really start to drop off as we get into New York, 63, and then down to 58. So the definition of the warm front is where we first encounter the change in temperature from warm to cold. So we're going to put that probably something like that right there. That looks to be the position of the warm front this evening. And then up to the north, it comes down as a cold front like this. And then further north, we've probably got an occlusion up into western Ontario there. Then as far as severe weather potential, if we've got a very strong upper air disturbance and instability, we would look at the axis of the moisture. So let me bring this a little bit further south. And so the moisture axis is going to run from, looks like southwestern Missouri, pretty much up to Wisconsin. It looks like it's aligned right along that cold front there coming south. So the strongest moisture is 1 degrees there in Springfield. Okay. So we're kind of developing that visualization of what's happening weather-wise. And let's bring it down into Texas where we have this weather going on. Well, it looks like we've got much different conditions comparing, say, Laredo or San Antonio to Little Rock. Temperatures come down quite a bit in a similar manner to what you see in Ohio. So I think even going from Houston and Galveston in this area to Arkansas looks like a temperature contrast between those two areas. So I think we may be looking at some sort of frontal boundary, or it could be outflow running something like that. And then up to the north, we've got that cold air mass on its way south. There's a leading edge of that. And you can see there in Colorado, the polar air mass does not really come through there very much. So there's the axis of that cold front, and you can see that we've got northerly and northeasterly wind over western Kansas right there. But once you get towards the Colorado Springs area, the flow is still out of the south, and it's relatively warm in that region. Actually a little bit cooler than Kansas, but normally when we have very strong polar air masses coming south through Colorado, usually there's a very strong north wind and temperatures very cool through this area, and we're not really seeing that today. However, these patterns can be very ripe for upslope flow there in Colorado. So if we've got a pattern kind of like this, we would be watching this area here for upslope thunderstorms. And that can be augmented by a low-level jet kind of flowing up this way towards this area where we have surface pressure falls. Okay, let's take a look at the satellite, and this is probably a good time for me to check out what's going on in chat. And there you can see the storms there over central Texas. And let's see here. Let me switch over and take a look at the chat window. We've got Electric Dog here and David Moore up in DFW. Thunder showers lifting north across the Metroplex tonight. We have Fun with Tech here, and Electric Dog is looking for some storms there in Illinois. Quiet in San Antonio, where Ryan Myers is. Ron Chalfant reports cool and windy in Southern California. We've got Sarah Wood with us and Ryan Toomies, Stephen R. and Dwayne Ward. And yeah, Dwayne, I got your links there. I actually went through all of the replies to all the comments, all the YouTube comments. I went through all those, and I got caught up with about 2 weeks of posts in there. So yeah, I'm going to start using some more internet links as we get into fall here. Carl Berghoff reports he's late. Tropics coming together again. October surprise, Ryan says, possibly coming together just east of Nicaragua and Costa Rica. Veo Joe reports 70 degrees in Illinois. NHC reporting of Day 5 posting advisory. We're going to look at that. In fact, I can just switch right over to that. Yeah, there's the NHC 5-day advisory, and you can see the action we've got. 70% chance of cyclone formation in the next 5 days, and we're looking for a track up into the Gulf of Mexico. And I remember initially, a few days ago, we were looking for a track more over Florida. The European model was taking that system kind of eastward like this. And the GFS was going for, I think, more of a path like that right there. So NHC, they've, looks like, got kind of a westerly path, so we'll take a look at that and see if there's been changes. 60 degrees, partly cloudy in Denver, where Mike is, Mike Estwick. Very muggy in North Texas, tropical air mass. Yeah, dew points are way up today. Mike Estwick asking how the book writing is coming along. It's pretty substantial. I'm up to about 5 or 6 in the morning every night. And I think there's a good chance it'll be out in the next couple weeks here. I'm up to about 110 pages, and that's without illustrations. So we're going to have a book here in the next month. It's going to be covering instability and shear. David Moore reporting more buffering tonight. Oh yeah, that's probably GR level 2 doing that. If everybody is seeing buffering, this is probably why I've got GR level. I've got the radar stuff going. So we'll just take one look at the display here. Showers south of Dallas and out around Glen Rose down to Brownwood. Nothing severe there. Okay, so hopefully that'll give us a little bit of relief from the buffering. Okay, Mike Bexley is here, beautiful in central Ohio. Yep, high pressure there, 71 degrees. But the flow is turning around out to the south in the Midwest, as we've seen. And Ron Chalfant looking forward to the release of the next book. And Mike Bexley, too. Thank you. Okay. Check out the patterns going on across the U.S. Let me get my windows set up here. This is the view from the Polar Orbiter satellite earlier today. This is visible imagery. And looks like a well-developed occlusion over the northern plains, and then the main baroclinic area out ahead of that low. So the main area we're looking at for like low pressure development would actually be in here. And we've talked a bit about baroclinic leafs. We can see a little bit of that baroclinic leaf pattern kind of embedded in all this, kind of in this region right there. And that's where we find the low in this area here. That's where we have the most significant warm air advection. And then out here we've got the tropical air and the cold air advection region, just adjacent to that. This here is the dry sector, and let me see if I can bring up the state outlines. Okay, so dry slot in the Dakotas. So this is some of the polar air, the dry polar air coming around the south and east side of the low. And then when we shift down to the south, we get into the tropical air, and we've seen those high dew points during the day. So not surprisingly, we've got kind of a lot of tropical air and tropical clouds, a lot of stratocumulus and altocumulus spreading north-northeast. There's probably a low-level jet in place through this region right there. Then down in Texas, we see a lot of storm anvils there. So you see those right there, storm anvils spreading off to the east there. So a lot of destabilization taking place in Texas, and I've got some graphics up for us to take a look at. And what I've done here is I've taken the numerical, the NAM data for DFW from yesterday. You can see up to the top, I've got a 3-hour forecast for yesterday morning. So we're going to take a look at a time trend. If I can get this window rescaled, let me see if I can do that. I have to scale that down just a little bit more there. Yeah, if we ever get the internet improved here, I can put this out in HD, and we'll have a much better picture here. Okay, I think we're good to go. Let's see. Let me see if this trying to get the slideshow stuff to work. Oh, yeah, that's what I need to do here. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll try that one more time. Okay, so we're going to take a look at a time trend of the DFW area. So we start out yesterday morning. We can see that there's dry air right off the surface there at DFW, and there's some warm temperatures aloft. So during the day, temperatures come up, and you can see the change there in the sounding. See, there's that strong heating. We come up to 90 degrees. And then the dew points, pretty good moisture, 66-degree dew points. And a very thick layer there of about 5,000 feet deep of moisture there. And then the evening sounding looking like this, just a tiny bit of cooling around 7 p.m. So right around peak heating, it looks like that right there. And we're not getting any showers yesterday due to a little bit of capping. So we try to construct a parcel, and looks like we've got just enough capping to keep things from developing. And the instability looks to be pretty weak up above that. So let's take a look at the changes overnight. Dew point appears to come up a little bit. See, now it's up to about 67, and now we're up to 71. 72, and now this is about 6 in the morning, and we've seen a little bit of cooling in the mid-levels. So now the parcels are able to ascend with a little bit less resistance. So let's take a look at that one more time, going from yesterday morning Yeah, see that little layer of warm air right there? That's about 11,000 feet up. Looks like the column warms a little bit around midnight, and then it cools back down. You can see the line shifting a little bit to the left here, the red line, the temperature. So now we've got just enough warm air removed and just enough moisture added to where our parcels are pretty much uncapped. And that's the situation that we have today. Not much instability here, very little cape, but plenty of moisture and a complete absence of capping there. So this is the noon sounding, forecast sounding, and then this is 4 p.m. See, now we're adding a little bit of heating, and things really start developing there. So you see that 75 degrees there, plenty of moisture in the low levels. And then the cape looks to be in the 500 to 1,000 range. Okay, as far as soundings, looks like just a little bit of helicity there. Storm motion almost stationary, maybe a little bit of slight eastward drift. Then the 0 through 1 storm relative helicity looking like that. There is just a little bit of SRH there. But the big thing we're lacking here is cape. And also the bulk shear is pretty low, so once we get cells going up, they're going to tend to collapse on themselves. You can see the wind profile here. Very weak winds aloft, 30 to 40 knot winds. So the bulk wind vector is about like that, maybe about 20 or 30 knots there. It's a little bit of bulk shear, but not very much there. I'm looking at a couple things on here. Okay. All right, let's continue on. Actually, yeah, let's check out the rest of the soundings overnight, and we'll see what the trend is for the next day there at DFW. This is tonight, midnight, 4 a.m., and then 6 a.m., 7 a.m. right there. Looks like a little bit of drying in the mid-levels, a little bit of capping starting to develop again. And then for tomorrow, it looks like the moisture levels have come down a little bit. We're back down to 67. So now with 90 degrees and mixed layer, now we've got negative energy right there. So we'll have a little bit of convective inhibition, and that should make the storms a little bit less widespread there. Okay, back to the charts. Let's take a look down in the tropics, and there's our new system coming together there off the coast of, looks like Costa Rica there. There's Nicaragua. Pretty sure that's Nicaragua, and this is Costa Rica. And there's our storm system coming together, and we're going to expect that to come northward over the next few days. Okay, let's see here. Let's check out the 250 millibar chart. Okay, we do got a little bit of a polar front jet. This is actually maybe a subtropical jet. Yeah, see this very strong anticyclonic signature here. This is a good indicator of a subtropical jet. The main polar front jet well up to the north there. So this is going to be kind of a shallow jet. 60 knots up along the Red River, much weaker down to the south. And then at 500 millibars, you can definitely see the winds with a polar front jet, 60 to 70 knots up there in the Rockies, and no sign of the subtropical jet down in the lower latitudes. So that's one way you can differentiate the two. So the main baroclinic area from California up to Minnesota there. All right, we'll go ahead and take a look at the forecast and start on that and see what's going to happen over the next few days. Let me get my graphics loaded up here. We'll take a quick look at the upper air changes. This is the 200 millibar chart. Okay, so we start out with a lot of troughing there in the western U.S. and ridging out over the eastern U.S. So a little bit of warm air there in the Great Lakes area and the Ohio River Valley. Then over the next couple days, we'll see a lot of jet energy there in the Rockies. Looks like the subtropical jet kind of builds northward a little bit. And then towards Friday and Saturday, it looks finally like that trough starts to open up and move eastward. So there's the trough over Utah and Colorado on Friday, and now it emerges into the Great Plains for Friday night and Saturday. So there will probably be a little bit of severe weather possible in Kansas and Nebraska. And that'll move into the Midwest for Saturday and Sunday. So there it goes right there. Let's take a look at the soundings for, say, Chicago for during the day. 18Z. This is a forecast GFS sounding. And not very much warm air, 66 degrees. Southwest winds there. Looks kind of like cloudy. Yeah, it looks like we're lacking a cap for one thing. We really need some capping in there to get storms going. And let's take a look at a little bit further south, maybe around south of Champaign. A little bit drier. A little bit a little bit warmer air. Looks like a kind of air mass contrast there. Let me go in between the two there. Let me go up to Champaign. Maybe up to Lincoln. See, I'm looking at the severe weather potential for that area. Yeah, much different here. Now I've got a surface temperature of about 68 there at Lincoln. So not much capping there, but I do think that we may have the potential there for some severe weather. Yeah, it looks like a little bit of capping showing up there, and temperatures coming up as you go south. And we do have kind of a straight line photograph, though, as you can see here. So this is going to favor more along the lines of splitting cells. We don't have like the curved photograph you typically see in a tornado outbreak type pattern. Let me go a little bit further south. Let me go down to Paducah. Photograph is a little bit shorter, but we're still lacking curvature there. And then our mixed layer method brings our parcels up into relatively warm air. So it looks like we're kind of lacking instability. So that'll probably limit the extent of any severe weather over the weekend. Okay, then let's continue on into the remainder of the weekend and into the next week. Strong troughing over the Rockies. So it looks like we've got some polar air on the way south. And then we have height rises around midweek. So warm air advection appears to be taking place over the central U.S. And then we've got something going on in Southern California around midweek there. Looks like a little bit of a trough there. Okay, so now we'll look at the European model and maybe see where that tropical system is. Check out what the forecast is doing on that. Okay, for Wednesday and Thursday, mostly high pressure in the central U.S., a little bit of cyclogenesis in Nebraska and Kansas. I can see low pressure out in the Gulf there. And then our system emerges. I'm going to have to move the map. This is Saturday morning. You can see a 991 millibar low comes out of Central Gulf. And then for Sunday morning, 982, a little bit of development there. Kind of slow moving. It only moves from here to here over 48 hours. And then we have landfall around Pensacola, 980 millibar system. So probably somewhere between, I would guess, probably a tropical storm and maybe a Cat 1 hurricane. And then after that, we've got high pressure moving in around Monday and Tuesday. European model is very aggressive, bringing that cold air south, more so than the GFS was doing yesterday. And big 1035 millibar high, and tons of cold air coming southward. All right, let's check out the GFS forecast, and I think we're going to see a little bit different picture there. Okay, things lift northward with the jet, and looks like for tomorrow we're going to have some storms and showers in Oklahoma. And GFS going for more of a track towards Florida. No, this is a different system. Yeah, this is kind of an easterly wave system. Let me move this up a little bit, and you can see that better. So you can see a little easterly wave right there on Wednesday, and that develops around Miami on Thursday. And then that moves up towards Louisiana. And then our system comes out of the Yucatan on Saturday. And the GFS going for more of a westerly track, making landfall around New Orleans on Sunday. So the time frame is in agreement with the European model around Sunday or Monday. And we are looking at landfall somewhere in the central or eastern Gulf. But we just don't know how far east or west that'll be. It does appear that there has been some westward migration on that track there. So anyway, we're just going to have to, kind of watch it, and maybe around Thursday or Friday we'll have a better idea where the system will be headed. Okay, then after that makes landfall, moves up into the Ohio River Valley. Here comes our next system out of Canada, and this will be a cold one, 540 decameter thickness coming all the way down south. It looks like the GFS is going more in line with the European model now at this point. Maybe not completely what the European model is doing. It looks like it kind of gets hung up here. It looks like some cyclogenesis in the Four Corners area around Tuesday or Wednesday takes place, and that kind of puts a brake on the southward movement of that high there. So the GFS going for a little bit more activity in this region compared to the European model. And then we get to the end of the run, and that's about it. And if the GFS pans out, we're going to have, looks like, quite a bit of upslope flow in Texas there, so more rain for that part of the country. Okay, that's about all I got for today. Appreciate you all joining the webcast. Let me get the closeout music going, and then after we do the credits, we're going to go and do the playback of the storm to the south here and a little bit of thunder. Okay, let me take a quick look in chat, and let's see here. Justin Pulliam seeing some isolated storms coming off the Gulf for a couple of days. Ryan seeing the same thing there. And that's about it there in chat. So I guess I'm pretty much done, and I'm going to grab some dinner, and I will let you guys go. Anyway, have a good evening, and we will see you tomorrow.